When we think about healing, most of us imagine it as a process of letting go, of forgetting what hurt us, of moving past our pain as if it never happened. But what if I told you that true healing isn't about erasing our past or pretending our wounds don't exist? What if healing is actually about something completely different? Something that requires us to turn toward ourselves rather than away from our experiences. This understanding changes everything about how we approach our own recovery and growth. The misconception that healing means forgetting comes from a culture that's uncomfortable with pain, that wants quick fixes and immediate relief. We're taught to push through, to get over it, to move on as fast as possible. But this approach often leaves us feeling disconnected from ourselves, as if we're living someone else's life or wearing a mask that doesn't quite fit. When we try to forget our pain, we often end up forgetting parts of ourselves too, the very parts that hold our wisdom, our strength, and our authentic voice. Real healing, the kind that actually transforms us, begins when we understand that our experiences, even the painful ones, are not separate from who we are. They're woven into the fabric of our being, and when we try to cut them out, we create holes in our sense of self. Instead of trying to forget, healing invites us to remember not just the pain, but also our resilience, our capacity to survive, and the parts of ourselves that remained intact even in our darkest moments. Consider for a moment how a tree grows around a wound. When a branch is torn away or the bark is damaged, the tree doesn't try to forget that the injury happened. Instead, it grows new tissue around the wound, incorporating it into its structure while continuing to reach toward the light. The scar becomes part of the tree's story, part of its unique beauty and strength. This is much closer to what human healing actually looks like than our fantasy of complete erasure. The process of reconnecting with ourselves begins with curiosity rather than judgment. Instead of asking, "Why can't I just get over this?" we might ask, "What is this experience trying to teach me about myself?" This shift in perspective opens up possibilities that judgment closes down. It allows us to approach our own healing with the same compassion we might offer a dear friend who's struggling.
When we start to reconnect with ourselves, we often discover that beneath our pain are needs that were never met, voices that were never heard, and parts of ourselves that were never allowed to fully exist. These discoveries can be uncomfortable at first, but they're also profoundly liberating. We begin to understand that our struggles weren't personal failures or signs of weakness, but natural responses to circumstances that were beyond our control. This reconnection process isn't always gentle or easy. Sometimes it feels like meeting a stranger who's been living in our own body, someone whose needs and feelings we've ignored for so long that we've forgotten they exist. But as we build this relationship with ourselves, as we learn to listen to our inner voice with the same attention we might give to a trusted friend, something beautiful begins to happen. We start to feel more solid, more real, more authentically ourselves. The beauty of this approach is that it doesn't require us to minimize our experiences or pretend they didn't matter. Instead, it honors the full spectrum of our humanity while helping us reclaim our power. We're not victims of our past when we understand it as part of our story rather than the whole story. We become the authors of our own narrative, able to choose how we want to grow from here. Many people resist this process because they're afraid that reconnecting with themselves means drowning in their pain. But the opposite is usually true. When we stop running from our experiences and start understanding them, they often lose their power to control us. The pain that seemed overwhelming when we were fighting it becomes manageable when we stop struggling against it and start working with it instead. This doesn't mean we should stay stuck in our pain or use it as an excuse to avoid growth. Rather, it means we can use our experiences as teachers, as sources of wisdom about what we need to feel safe, loved, and whole. Every wound carries information about what was missing, what was needed, and what we can provide for ourselves now that we couldn't access then.
The journey of reconnection often reveals that we're much more resilient than we thought. We discover strengths we didn't know we had, resources we'd forgotten about, and capacities for healing that seemed impossible from the outside. This isn't about toxic positivity or pretending that trauma is a gift. It's about recognizing that within every human being lives an incredible capacity for growth, healing, and transformation. As we move through this process, we often find that our relationship with our emotions begins to change. Instead of seeing difficult feelings as enemies to be defeated, we start to understand them as messengers carrying important information. Anger might be telling us about a boundary that was crossed. Sadness might be honoring something we've lost. Fear might be trying to protect us from repeating past hurts. When we listen to these messages instead of shutting them down, we gain access to a wisdom that can guide us toward what we truly need. How are you feeling right now as you consider this different way of thinking about healing? Does it resonate with something you've experienced, or does it challenge beliefs you've held about what recovery should look like? I'm curious about your own journey and what you've discovered about yourself along the way. These aren't just abstract concepts we're exploring. They're deeply personal questions that touch the core of who we are and who we're becoming. If you're finding value in this conversation, I want to thank you for being here and for clicking on this video. You're part of the Not What It Seems community, where we explore these deeper questions about healing, growth, and what it means to be human. This is a space where we can dig beneath surface-level answers and discover the more complex, nuanced truths about our experience. We're here together, sharing this journey of understanding, and I'm grateful for your presence in this exploration. The reconnection process often involves grieving not just what happened to us, but also what didn't happen. We might grieve the childhood we didn't have, the support we needed but didn't receive, or the version of ourselves we might have been if circumstances had been different. This grief is not self-pity. It's a necessary part of accepting reality so we can work with what is, rather than what we wish had been. As we reconnect with ourselves, we often discover that healing happens in layers. Just when we think we've worked through something, another aspect of it might surface. This isn't a sign that we're failing or going backward. It's evidence that we're ready to handle deeper levels of understanding and integration. Each layer we peel back reveals more of who we truly are beneath the protective strategies we developed to survive. The process of reconnecting with ourselves also involves learning to trust our own perceptions and experiences. Many of us learned early on to doubt ourselves, to prioritize others' comfort over our own truth, or to minimize our needs to avoid conflict. Healing means reclaiming our right to know what we know, feel what we feel, and need what we need without having to justify or defend these basic aspects of our humanity. This reconnection isn't just about looking backward, it's about creating a different relationship with ourselves moving forward. We learn to check in with ourselves regularly, to notice when something doesn't feel right, and to honor our boundaries before they're crossed rather than after we're already hurt. We develop an internal compass that can guide us toward what nourishes us and away from what depletes us. One of the most profound aspects of this healing journey is discovering that we can be both wounded and whole at the same time. We don't have to wait until we're completely healed to start living fully. We can acknowledge our struggles while also celebrating our growth. We can honor our pain while also accessing our joy. This both-and approach to healing is much more sustainable than the all-or-nothing thinking that keeps us stuck in cycles of self-criticism and disappointment. The reconnection process often reveals patterns in our lives that we hadn't noticed before. We might see how we've been unconsciously recreating familiar dynamics, or how we've been seeking from others what we needed to provide for ourselves.
These insights aren't meant to shame us, but to empower us with choice. Once we see the patterns, we can begin to change them. As we become more connected to ourselves, we often find that our relationships with others begin to shift as well. We might set boundaries that feel scary at first, but ultimately create more authentic connections. We might find ourselves drawn to different types of people or experiences that better align with who we're becoming. These changes can be disorienting, but they're usually signs that we're moving in the right direction. The healing journey also teaches us about the difference between reacting and responding. When we're disconnected from ourselves, we often react automatically, based on old patterns and unprocessed emotions. As we reconnect, we develop the ability to pause, to check in with ourselves, and to choose how we want to respond based on what's actually happening in the present moment, rather than what happened in the past. This doesn't mean we become perfect or that we never get triggered. It means we develop a different relationship with being triggered. Instead of seeing it as a failure, we can see it as information. Instead of judging ourselves for having reactions, we can get curious about what those reactions are trying to tell us about our needs, our boundaries, or our unfinished business. The journey of reconnecting with ourselves often involves rediscovering parts of ourselves that we had to hide or suppress to survive in environments that weren't safe for our full expression. We might rediscover our creativity, our playfulness, our assertiveness, or our sensitivity. These qualities were never really gone. They were just waiting for us to create conditions where they could safely emerge again. As we near the end of our exploration today, I want to acknowledge something important. This work of reconnecting with ourselves isn't always easy, and it's not something we do once and then we're done. It's an ongoing practice, a way of living that honors both our struggles and our strength. It's about showing up for ourselves with the same consistency and compassion we might show a beloved friend who's going through a difficult time.
The beautiful thing about this approach to healing is that it doesn't require us to be anything other than human. We don't have to transcend our humanness or rise above our experiences. We just have to be willing to turn toward ourselves with curiosity and compassion, to listen to what we need, and to take small steps toward providing that for ourselves. Remember, healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means reconnecting with the fullness of who you are, honoring your experiences while not letting them define your limits, and choosing to grow in ways that feel authentic to your true nature. You are not broken and in need of fixing. You are a human being with a unique story, and that story, in all its complexity, is worth honoring and understanding. Thank you for joining me on this journey today. If this resonated with you, I'd love for you to hit that like button to let me know. Your engagement helps this content reach others who might need to hear these words. I'm deeply curious about your own experiences with healing and reconnection, so if you feel called to share your thoughts or insights in the comments below, I'd be honored to hear from you. And if you're finding value in these conversations, consider subscribing to Not What It Seems, where we continue exploring these deeper questions about healing, growth, and what it means to be authentically human. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.